About 420 million years ago, Earth was very different than what it is today. Dry land was still new and relatively empty, but in the seas, terrifying creatures swam, from early sharks to lobe-finned hunters to armored giants and eerie predators. The waters were far more dangerous than dry land. Beneath the waves, life exploded in diversity, especially among fish, leading this period to be called the Age of Fish. Welcome to the Devonian Period. So hold your breath and let's dive in to a time when the ocean was the most dangerous place on Earth. Lobe-finned fish at the time were a common occurrence, but among its many predators, one stood out. This was Hyneria. Hyneria, like all lobe-finned fish, had fleshy fins that looked more like little limbs than typical fish fins. It lived in fresh water during the later part of the Devonian Period, between 360 million and 371 million years ago. Hyneria was a large predator. It is estimated to have reached 2.5 to 3 meters in total length. It was an ambush predator, lurking in rivers and coastal waters. But, because of its muscular fins, it's been theorized Hyneria could beach itself on purpose to prey on tetrapods on land. Definitely not a good time to fall asleep in the sand. Another lobe-finned fish that swam in the waters at the time was from the genus Onychodus, which means claw-toothed. Onychodus was about 2 to 4 meters in length and lived in the open ocean. Their name comes from their characteristic tusks at the front of the lower jaw. These tusks would shed periodically. Juvenile Onychodus had 5 or 6 tusks, but as the fish grew older, the old tusk in the front would fall out and another would be inserted. However, the number of tusks was limited, so older Onychodus had fewer tusks in the lower jaw. Most likely, Onychodus was an ambush predator, using its powerful fins to accelerate quickly and dagger-like teeth to grasp unfortunate prey. But the fish that the Devonian is perhaps best known for were very different than the ones you and I know today. They wore armor, either made of big plates or interlocking scales. These were the Placoderms. These fish had an endoskeleton, mainly made up of cartilage. However, they are known for the plates of armor that covered their head and thorax. Placoderms were the first fish to have jaws, giving them the ability to bite, chew, and grind their food, rather than just scrape or filter feed. These fish first appeared in the fossil record during the early Silurian period, around 440 million years ago. However, it was during the Devonian period that Placoderms diversified and produced some of the most infamous predators the oceans have ever seen. These fish lacked distinct teeth. Instead, they used the sharpened edges of a bony plate on their jawbone as a biting surface. The largest member of this group of Placoderms was the infamous Dunkleosteus terrelli. It was a super predator that inhabited open waters and once was thought it could reach as much as 10 meters in length. However, their true size and appearance is mostly unknown, leading to widely varying size estimates. More recent studies have suggested that Dunkleosteus terrelli was considerably smaller than once thought. Size estimates produced a length of 3.4 meters for typical adults, with exceptional individuals potentially reaching lengths of 4.1 meters, with estimates greater than 4.5 meters being poorly supported. Dunkleosteus terrelli, despite having menacing-looking jaws, it did not have teeth. However, it still produced extremely high forces when closing the jaw. The sharpened edges of bone could have produced almost 7,500 newtons, making it one of the strongest bite force of any living or fossil fish. Such a strong bite force, it could prey on armored prey, such as ammonites, but also other placoderms, since fossils have shown placoderms with traces of bite marks. This is a cheek plate from a Dunkleosteus, or rather, what's left of it. The red area is missing, probably snapped off by a bite. Highlighted in red, you can also see at least a dozen punctures, probably caused by the jaws of another Dunkleosteus. This is where their armor would come in handy, and, interestingly, Dunkleosteus even had armor in their eyes. Take a closer look. You can clearly see a piece of armor at the front of the eye, with a hole for the pupil in the center. These are called scleral rings, and other animals like birds have them as well. Scleral rings likely kept the eye from deforming when the hand moved too quickly, keeping the eye stable, which helped them maintain sharp focus during rapid lunges at prey. Definitely not what you want to see when swimming in the ocean. However, Dunkleosteus was not the only giant placoderm to have swam the waters of the Devonian. There was a fish whose name literally means Titanic fish. This is Titanophis. Like Dunkleosteus terrelli, its length has been considerably downsized. Older studies suggested Titanophis clarkii to have reached a length of 7 to 7.6 meters. However, a more recent study from 2023 estimated that Titanophis clarkii's size was likely similar to Dunkleosteus terrelli and likely did not reach sizes of 5 meters. But, unlike Dunkleosteus, Titanophis didn't have sharp cutting jaws. Instead, it had small, ineffective-looking mouthplates. This leads scientists to believe Titanophis was a filter feeder, like basking sharks. So, it turns out Titanophis may have been truly a gentle giant. However, swimming in deep waters during the Devonian period was still not the greatest of ideas, so one might think that the solution was to stick to the shallows. However, that is where he could run into, or rather swim into, Eurypterids, the often called sea scorpions. This group is likely to have first appeared during the Ordovician period, though the group continued to diversify during the subsequent Devonian period, and it was during this time that some reached impressive sizes. Jaekelopterus has been estimated to have reached a size of around 2.3 to 2.6 meters, making it the largest non-arthropod that has ever existed. Although Eurypterids such as Jaekelopterus are often called sea scorpions, fossil evidence suggests they lived primarily in freshwater environments, where they most likely reigned as apex predators. Their chelicerae were large, curved, and had denticles of varying lengths, perfectly adapted for strong puncturing and grasping, while their compound eyes and high visual acuity revealed they were active hunters. Fully grown individuals could dominate their ecosystems, preying on smaller arthropods, including members of their own species, and also early vertebrates. But perhaps even scarier than lobe-finned fish that would beach themselves, fish that wore armor plates, and giant aquatic arthropods, was a group of creatures we know not from their bodies, but rather from their teeth. I'm talking about Conodonts. Rare soft tissues suggest that they had elongated eel-like bodies with large eyes. However, they are primarily known from their hard mineralized tooth-like structures called Conodont elements. For a long time, the function and arrangement of Conodont elements puzzled scientists. However, they now believe these elements were used to actively catch and eat prey. S and M elements would be used to firmly grasp prey, while P elements, shaped like blades, would process the food by slicing against their counterparts, like a pair of scissors. But that's not even the most interesting part. A 2009 study showed that many of these elements had a deep groove, usually associated with sharp edges or ridges. These grooves were similar to those present in some current groups of venomous vertebrates, which strongly suggests some conodonts may have utilized venom when hunting. So yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to get bitten by one. The oceans of the Devonian were truly vicious, foraging predators unlike anything before or since. Lobe-finned hunters stalked in the water and shore, armored titans clashed, sea scorpions dominated the shallows, and strange conodonts hunted with venom. However, even the fiercest could not outswim time. The late Devonian is characterized by one of Earth's big 5 mass extinctions. Hyneria and Onychoros went extinct, along with Placoderms and other aquatic groups. Sea scorpions were heavily affected. They declined in numbers and diversity until becoming extinct at the beginning of the Triassic during the Permian-Triassic extinction event, around 252 million years ago. Conodonts, on the other hand, proved incredibly resilient, surviving all the way into the early Jurassic, around 201 million years ago, proving how successful this group was, until they finally disappeared, likely outcompeted by the new wave of Mesozoic animals. With Placoderms gone, what rose in their place were the ancestors of some of the ocean's modern rulers, the rays, sharks, and bony fish that still dominate today. Lobe-finned fish set foot on dry earth, and a new era began, the era of amphibians. The age of fish had come to an end, but its echoes never truly faded. For every scale, every fin, every predator's gaze still bears the mark of a ferocity forged in the Devonian, a reminder that there once was a time when the ocean was the most dangerous place on Earth.